What you're looking at is an image of the body fat that exists right under your skin. If you zoom in close enough, you'll see that it's largely made of fat cells clumped together. These fat cells are super small. Their length is about as thick as a human hair. And if you did zoom in, you'd see that there are a lot of cells. Billions, actually. These specific kind of fat cells are called white fat cells. Their main job is to store fat that comes from food that we eat. Our bodies use some of the food we eat as fuel. When we eat more food than our body needs, it will store some of the leftovers in fat cells. As our fat cells store more and more fat, they'll get bigger in size. And since our body fat is largely made out of white fat cells, this means we grow bigger in size. On the flip side, if our fat cells get rid of the fat that they store, they shrink in size, and so do our bodies. During a Brazilian butt lift, one of the surgeon's goals is to keep as many of these fat cells as alive as possible. If too many of the fat cells don't make it, a patient's butt won't be as round as they hoped it would be after their recovery. Shrinking bodies and shrinking butts. Now those are two great reasons to want to understand what fat cells really are. Hi, I'm Jessie with Seia, the Lipo-8 specialists. It's time to learn more about the human body and answer the question, what is a fat cell? You'll walk away from this video with a better understanding of three really important things. 1, what a fat cell is. 2, how a white fat cell is different from a brown fat cell. And 3, how your fat cells play a big role in what we call burning fat. So, let's get started. To get a good idea of what a white fat cell really is, we're going to build one from scratch. Fat cells are shaped like little balls, like this one here. They have an outer layer all around them called a membrane. Important things like water, oxygen, and broken down fats and sugars from the food that you eat can pass through this outer layer and get into your cells. For this reason, the outer layer is not totally solid. Things can seep into them and also out of them. So, there's the shape of your cell and the membrane, which keeps the cell together in one piece and lets important stuff come in and out of it. But what's inside? Just like your body has organs such as your heart, brain, and lungs, so does your fat cells, in a way. They have what we'll call mini organs that help them work and stay alive, just like our organs do for us. Cells have a handful of these mini organs inside of them. We're going to focus on 3 of the most important ones. One mini organ in a white fat cell is this sac where the fat is kept, and that orange stuff right there is fat, the type of fat that you find in food. You can see how most of the space in the cell is dedicated to storing fat. New fat can be added to the fat cells. If your body needs more energy, these cells can get rid of some of the fat that they're storing. Another mini organ in a fat cell is called the nucleus. The nucleus is where most of your DNA is kept. DNA is the code specific to making you. It decides important things like our hair color, eye color, how tall we are, and even if we're at risk of certain diseases. Here's a real picture of a fat cell. You can see the nucleus as a spot here. The nucleus appears in almost every image you'll see of any kind of cell. The third mini organ is where all the fat-burning magic happens. It's where almost all of the energy in your body is made. It's so important that we're going to put its name in big letters. Mitochondria. This name sounds very scientific, but when it was first discovered, they had no idea what it did or how important it was. So they named it based on what it looks like. Chondrion means grain, and the mitochondria looks like a grain of rice, doesn't it? We'll be getting to know the mitochondria better later in this video. So there it is, the fat cell we built from scratch with all of its important parts. Now that we have this fat cell built, there's one really important thing to know, and it might be a little surprising. Nearly every single part of your body is made up of cells. Just like your body fat is made out of fat cells, your brain is made out of brain cells, your muscles are made out of muscle cells, and your skin is made out of skin cells. Take a second to look at these other types of cells. You can see they all have nucleus, and they are all contained by an outer layer, the membrane. And you can bet that they all have mitochondria. Look at how differently they're shaped. The shape of a cell is based on what role it plays in your body. Muscle cells need to be able to be stretched and tightened. That's why they've got this special shape and are not round like our fat cells. Brain cells need to make connections with other brain cells, so the membranes have areas specifically made to branch out and connect to each other. Our fat cells might be simple looking compared to these other types of cells in your body, but the truth is they are perfectly shaped and made for carrying out their most important job, storing fat. To prove this point even further, think about this. The nucleus is a pretty big deal, and it's usually found close to the center of the cell. But in a fat cell, the nucleus is pushed completely off to the side, near the membrane, to the point that its shape gets squished a bit from round to more flattened out. Check out what the nucleus looks like in a white fat cell compared to a brain cell. Most of the cell is taken up by the sac filled with fat. That's because storing fat, a lot of fat, is the cell's main priority. You're already pretty familiar with a white fat cell, but what about a brown fat cell? You'll remember from our last video that we learned all about brown body fat along with white body fat. And if you haven't checked it out, be sure to pop over there and watch it after this video. Now that you know more about cells in general, you can see how it makes sense that our brown body fat is made out of brown fat cells and our white body fat is made out of white fat cells. Here's a white fat cell, and here's a brown fat cell. We've spent quite a bit of time getting to know our brown body fat, but since liposuction only deals with white fat underneath the skin, we'll be saying goodbye to brown body fat after this video. How sad. Luckily, it's going to do us one last favor before we say goodbye to it for good. It's going to help me explain one of these 3 types of burning fat that takes place in our body. Remember the mitochondria? You'll notice that brown fat cells have a whole lot of them. In fact, each cell can have hundreds of them or more. And when it comes to white fat cells, they only have a few. Well, there's a really simple reason for this difference. When we talk about burning fat, that's actually happening in the mitochondria. It's not quite burning like we think of it, like in a fire or a stove, but it does create a lot of heat. You'll remember from our last video that the main role of brown body fat is to warm us up when we're cold. And since burning fat happens in the mitochondria, that explains why brown fat cells have so many of them. There's a lot of burning and heat creation going on in every brown fat cell. Going back to the picture of the white versus brown fat cells, you'll notice that the white fat cell has one huge droplet of fat, and the brown fat cells, on the other hand, have a bunch of smaller ones. While brown fat cells have the exact same type of fat that's found in white fat cells, their main purpose is not to store fat. Instead, they use their smaller stores of fat as fuel to feed their many mitochondria and make heat. So that's what burning fat means in brown fat cells. But the interesting thing is that most of the time, the cells in our body do not burn fat to create heat. Heat is just a side effect of them burning fat to make something we use for energy. So what's that all about? Back in the beginning of the video, I mentioned that I touch upon the magic of burning fat that goes on in our cells. In reality, when you hear burning fat, it can mean 3 different things. We've gone over one meeting, creating heat in brown fat cells in more detail. But what about the other 2? Here's a quick overview to not keep you hanging. So, the second type of burning fat is used to talk about when and why our white fat cells release some of the fat that they have stored inside of them. This is how weight loss happens. The third type of burning fat happens when the mitochondria in our cells use broken down versions of food we eat to make a type of energy that our body needs. This might not seem as exciting as weight loss, but without this process, you wouldn't be able to move a single muscle in your body. How those 2 types of burning fat really work is the holy grail of understanding exercise, weight gain, weight loss, and eating carbs versus fats. The best way to learn more about burning fat? Like and subscribe to our channel. This way, you'll be sure to catch all of our videos on this topic. Let's recap. Our white body fat is made up of billions of white fat cells grouped together. Our white fat cells' main job is to store fat that comes from broken down food that we eat. Fat cells have an outer layer called the membrane, and they have many, many organs inside. 2 of these many organs are the nucleus and mitochondria. The mitochondria takes broken down food that we eat to make energy that our bodies can use. The mitochondria is the one behind the scenes pulling all the strings. It's where burning fat takes place. And if you thought fat cells are really small, in the next video, we're going to look at something that's so small, it's literally invisible to everything, except for some of the most powerful microscopes we have. That orange sack of fat that takes up most of the space in a fat cell, we're going to go inside of that and check out what's floating around in there. And this little journey will end up showing you what makes up literally everything else on our planet Earth. Slide on over to watch the next exciting video in our series on what is fat. I will see you there.